Welcome back to Sports Line, everybody, here on News Channel 5 Plus. John Burton, a rare appearance for me. Great to be back filling in for Steve Lehman tonight. Awesome to be back with you. Our producer, Taylor Prey, making things happen from the producer booth. And as promised, as we kind of put a lid on this Titans season and look ahead to next year and talk about a bunch of other stuff, we bring in our good buddy from Titans Radio, 104.5 The Zone, where he does a little show called the Midday 180 that just happens to be on at the same time as my show on WNSR Sports Radio with Greg Pogue. We still love him. The great Jonathan Hutton joins us. Jay Hutt, good evening. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, great to be back on, man. Anything for John Burton. You know that, JB. Hope you're doing well. By the way, someone sent me a tweet after Sunday Sports Central and said I called Steve JB on. I don't know if this is true. I don't recall doing this. But I responded and said, if I did that, that is a compliment to Steve Lehman.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because you know how I feel about Steve. I think he's the best in the city at what he does, much like you are. All right, when we look back at this Titans season, Jay Hutt, we were just talking before we came back from the break, and I didn't say it then, but I can reveal it now. I thought this team, with that defense, after the Cincinnati game, when Joe Burrow was picking those guys apart. They lost a game they had no business losing in Cincinnati right in October. That's when it hit me. I said, this team's going nowhere. This offense is great. Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. Tannehill's fantastic. You got two really good wide receivers, but you know this, Jay Hutt. Sooner or later, you got to stop somebody. And I knew with this defense that the Titans had, historically bad, as Paul Kaharski said on your show the other day. Last in the NFL in sacks, at the bottom in opponent's third down conversion rate. You got to stop people. And with that defense, as bad as it was, there was no way this team was going to make it to the Super Bowl. I thought maybe they could win a game, maybe, in the playoffs. But as far as even making it as far as a championship game like they did last year, I didn't think it was going to happen. What say you?
I agree. I mean, I didn't expect a deep run this year for the reasons you laid out, especially the third down defense. They can't get off the field. But it's still very disappointing that they have the effort that they had defensively this past Sunday against Baltimore, and the offense, which has been historically exceptional. This is the offense we will compare every other offense to moving forward.
Yep.
And they put up 13 points against the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, it's frustrating. They had 83 total yards in the final three quarters and only allowed 20 points for Baltimore. So I agree with you with what you're saying on the deep playoff run, but it was within the realm of possibility because this is an offense that we expected to go in and put up 26, 30, 35, 40 points a week, and they didn't come close to that this past weekend.
Yeah, they didn't. And you know what? You had a good view from the radio booth, and I was in the press box. It didn't seem like the Ravens were doing anything all that complicated defensively. It looked like they were crowding the box, and they were determined not to let Derrick Henry wreck the game. And, for whatever reason, the Titans couldn't respond to that. You would figure, if you're blitzing as much as they did, you're crowding the line of scrimmage as much as they did, well, that's a great recipe for, some play action and hit some deep throws, down the field. It just didn't happen for the Titans. What do you think the Ravens were able to do to really have this Titans offense, as you mentioned, so good, averaging 30 points a game, kind of stuck in the mud after scoring 10 points in two of their first three drives?
I thought they did first and foremost, here's what they did. They out-physicaled the Titans up front. They won the battle in the trenches on a routine basis in that game, especially on the interior. Where the Titans tried to run it, according to Pro Football Focus, they wanted to run to Saffold, behind Saffold 7 times. They ran behind the center and right guard 6 or 7 times in this game. Of the 18 carries, there's 13 of them right there, and they had one rushing first down in this game, and it was a Tannehill quarterback sneak. Derrick Henry didn't pick up a first down. His longest run was for 8 yards. Baltimore crowded the box, as you mentioned. They brought the run blitz, and they won at the point of attack because they had Calais Campbell and they had Brandon Williams back, who was really, really good. That I thought that was the difference in the game plan this go around versus the one we saw back in Week 11 when both of those two players were out. That being said, this is still an offense that wins their fair share of those battles, and even in Week 11, we didn't see Henry get going until the fourth quarter and then overtime. and he kept waiting on that. And, I have the great fortune of being in the booth with Mike Keith and Dave McGinnis, and they were waiting on that. You could tell by the pace of Mike's call on Sunday.
Right. I was actually listening. I was sorry to cut you off, Jay Hutt. I was listening to the broadcast while I was, in the press box covering the game, and you're right. You could hear that. It's like, when is it going to happen? When's that big play? When do we get over the hump in this game?
Yeah, and every carry seemed to be like the breakout carry, and that was the anticipation, and it just never came to be. Credit to Baltimore's defense, because their front seven thoroughly handled the Titans' offense in this game.
So now we walk the fine line, Jay Hutt, of 11 wins in division championship versus one and done in the playoffs 1 year after you were 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl. So I'll ask you, this Titan season, success or disappointment?
It's not a success on, January 13th? No, it's not a success today. And I think if you look back on a regular season, whenever March and April rolls around and you start to prepare for 2021 and the schedule that's coming up. But as we sit here right now, I can't point to the most recent result and be happy with the division title and 11 wins and think about what could have been. I can't help but think of the offense that was wasted. And you can say the offense didn't show up. That's part of my answer with this. 21 points wins that game. Yep. And this is an offense that we will constantly look at as the bar now. I mean, they accomplished some great things. The regular season was filled with successes, all the hurdles that they overcame, all the injuries, the non-factors that was this Titans draft class. Plenty of successes to get to 11 wins. That's remarkable considering the path that they took in the year they did this. All that being said, John, I can't sit here after a wild card loss when they hosted their first playoff game since 2008 and be okay with that. And I don't think Mike Vrabel and his staff would be either. I don't think the players would be. This was supposed to be the next step season off of what was a crazy, fun, overachieving group last year. I think we would all agree with that. No one expected the AFC Championship run. And they came in with a lot of expectations this year, which is great for the franchise. And if I'm being realistic, I can't call it a success as we sit here on a Wednesday night after a wild card weekend loss.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jonathan. And, speaking of Mike Vrabel and his staff, I've been trumpeting, all season that he has to get a standalone defensive coordinator next year. The whole deal of sharing things with Shane Bowen, the outside linebackers coach, obviously didn't work. I'm going to be nice here and say I wasn't crazy about the answers that Mike Vrabel gave on Monday at his last press conference about that situation, kind of, mocking the concern, quite frankly, that I think a lot of people have. Gut feeling, do you think Vrabel goes out and gets a DC next year, or is he going to be stubborn and say, I'm going to do it my way?
I think if he brings in a DC, it's someone that he knows well that's going to run the system that he runs. I mean, what we saw this year and what we've seen the last couple of years has been the Mike Vrabel style of defense. A better way of putting it, I don't think Jim Schwartz is coming in here and running a 4-3. I think Shane Bowen has a great chance to be named the defensive coordinator. As crazy as that may sound to some, at least you get the title of that, and we know exactly where to point the communication errors to. But far too often the players were mentioning the communication being an issue, and it is hard not to read into that trend, and it's hard not to compare what is primarily the same group back. There were some key pieces missing: Jarrell Casey, Logan Ryan, Wesley Woodyard. The communicators were missing from this defense, and so was Dean Pease. It's based on the production last year to this year. I don't see how you don't put and connect the dots on that. So, look, if it's Romeo Crennel, if it's someone of that sort, they're coming in here and they're running a style of defense that Vrabel would want to run anyway. And make no mistake about it, this is Vrabel's defense. People are running the meetings and doing it. Bowen's doing certain things on game day. They're running Vrabel's defense, and they had success with it with Dean Pease, and they did not have success with it this year. And if you have an average defense, who knows what the Titans are doing right now? They're probably not hosting the Baltimore Ravens in the first weekend of the playoffs. Maybe they have the 3 seed. Maybe they have the 2 seed, and they're hosting Cleveland. Maybe they're competing for that top spot in the AFC. As good as this offense was, they're not far away, but they have some big decisions to make this offseason to make that next hurdle.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, John Robinson, you look at his past offseason, you have to say it was probably more misses than hits. Yeah, you get the deal done with Tannehill. You get the deal done with Henry. That was great. But, Vic Beasley, an absolute bust as a free agent. Jadeveon Clowney, which I wasn't crazy about them bringing in from the Jump Street, proved to be a non-factor. Isaiah Wilson, you draft him with your first-round draft pick. Goodness knows what's going to happen to that young man. You hope he gets it together. Christian Fulton, he got hurt. I mean, you can't really fault injuries, but really a non-factor. And this is a big offseason for JR, no?
Yeah, that goes without saying. I don't fault him for the Clowney signing, John.
Okay.
I know, and you were consistent with not wanting it, but if he was not here this year, if they didn't go out and sign him, and they still cut Jarrell Casey, and all of that being equal without Clowney, we would be spending time tonight discussing the decision not to bring in Jadeveon Clowney. So that would be pointed to as a reason why the defense was so bad. I don't mind him swinging on that. I don't think Paul will mind me saying this. He's writing a piece for paulkoharski.com. He won't mind me because I just gave him a plug. This will go
he
up
likes
tomorrow.
that.
I think the headline is "Congratulations, Larrell Murchison, Rookie of the Year for the Tennessee Titans." That's how little of an impact they had from their rookie class. It starts there because we spent weeks and weeks discussing what pieces they needed, and the majority of the reasons are pointing to unfortunate injuries for Darrington Evans and Christian Fulton. But you mentioned Isaiah Wilson. I mean, I don't even know if he's on the roster next year. I wouldn't have him on here on the roster. And they have to have some impact players come in and perform well, both in free agency and the draft, because we know, we're spending a whole segment here talking defense. We know where they need to improve. And I think the focus on offense is to keep your group together as much as possible.
Up against the break, Jay Hutt. Can you hang for another segment?
You know it. I'm here.
You're the best. All right, more with Jonathan Hutton from Titans Radio as we discuss the Titans and hopefully get into what's ahead this weekend in the NFL playoffs. Some great games. We'll have Browns-Chiefs for you Sunday over on News Channel 5 at 2 o'clock. Looking forward to that. More with Jonathan Hutton here on Sportsline. Stay with us.